You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
I said, hey, hey, welcome to the Man Cave Happy Hour. I said, hey, hey, welcome to the Man Cave Happy Hour. We're gonna drink a fine whiskey and smoke a really fine cigar. I said, hey, ladies.
All right, it is happy hour. It is time for the Man Cave Happy Hour. Whiskey, cigars, spirits, and stories that go along with it. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Hey, I'm Matt Fox. Hey, guys.
Hey. And we are here with Joe Louis Bourbon. Tasting Tuesdays with Joe Louis Bourbon. It's a highlight of my week, Matt. What about you?
It's just the week has just started when we get here on Tuesday. So yes.
Oh my God, what a week!
Monday's just a warm up. Monday's just a stretching, getting ready for Tasting Tuesday. And I have a couple drops. Look at that empty bottle. I have a couple drops of Joe Louis Bourbon left. And
the really good news is it's available in 100 retail locations around the area. So
yes, Michigan, yes. It's lighting up the arena with Joe Louis Bourbon, and so it's available all over the place. I just got to get my backside in my car and get somewhere. But today we're going to talk about becoming really knowledgeable. Matt, you and I, the whole premise behind the Man Cave is that Matt and I are idiots.
Self-proclaimed. Yes, self-proclaimed at that. Yes.
We're very immature when it comes to knowledge of bourbon. We enjoy it. We like it. We want to learn about it. And apparently you can become a bourbon steward. And Peter, have you gone? I believe Peter went through this process.
I did. And before we introduce Michael, and I'm really excited about having Michael on the show with us tonight, I just want to say that tonight, right now, this very instance, we were all supposed to be together at the Detroit Shipping Company for the grand launch of Joe Louis Bourbon. And we were all so excited for that, and we'd worked so hard for that. And wow, what a gut punch! And what a gut punch! It's this is something I think that I'll remember for the rest of my life. And I was so looking forward to sitting with you guys tonight in Detroit. It was going to be a mad affair. And,
you know what? Well, there's a bright side. It's not going to happen, right? Is it okay? What's the bright side, Michael?
The bright side is that we've had 2 weeks head start on getting to taste it. Right?
We would have had to have waited.
You would have had to wait until tonight.
That's it.
Your bottle's already empty.
We've been all jealous of everybody. But yeah, so that's the thing. We're going to find out about becoming a bourbon steward. We got Michael Meir with us. And Michael is a bourbon steward, and it's Stave and Thief. Am I saying that correctly?
You are. Yep.
Okay.
Stave and Thief Society.
Michael, tell me about your childhood.
I love that question.
I think you said my childhood. Is that what we want to talk about?
Yeah.
What's the backstory?
Funny enough, I grew up in the Detroit area. I grew up on 11 Mile and Lasser. I went to Southfield Lathrop. So, being part of something that's Detroit born and raised is fun. It's exciting for me. And travels kind of took me all around, bartending, managing bars, kind of all around the world, from the Caribbean to Israel to South Dakota to Alaska. And I found myself here in Maine, and I was working for one of the big distributors. And at that time, I was a whiskey ambassador for the Northeast. And my goal at that time was to become one of these world brand ambassadors. I thought, what could be better than traveling the world, drinking whiskey, billing it back to the company. And I had an interview with the lead guy in Diageo, right? His name's Ewan Morgan. And I wanted to become part of the world whiskey master class. And we had some interviews, we talked, and he's like, you really like it, you got to move out to Pennsylvania. And I said, well, I got a wife and kids. Everyone likes it here in Maine. I don't think it's going to happen. And he goes, well, that's as far as we can take this thing. But I still wanted something to signify what I knew about whiskey. And in 2014, there wasn't much. And I started, looking online, and early on, Stave and Thief really didn't have much of a name. But I rolled the dice. I flew out to Kentucky. I took the class. And as I was sitting in the class, I'm kind of gazing around at everybody. And, you know, in the front of the class, who do I see? I see Ewan Morgan, who's the director of Diageo, who I just had this interview with. So I go over to him and I was like, hey, man, you know, what's the director of Diageo whiskey doing at this class? And he says, everyone that's going to be a whiskey ambassador for Diageo is going to take this course. And from that point forward, I knew that it had legs to it. I knew that it was a real course. Once I was certified, and what I tell the people that I reteach this class to is this becomes, you know, part of your professional persona. Not only, it's not a certificate you just get on your wall and you post it up there. It's a lapel pin that you wear and you sign off on your LinkedIn accounts, you know, your email address, you know, certified bourbon steward. It becomes part of who you are. The same way WEST wine certification is for a wine sommelier. So really, it's a way to signify the education you have with bourbon, which is nice.
Amazing. You went way too fast, Michael. So we're gonna rewind. We're gonna go back a little bit. Israel, you bartended in Israel. So part of your adventure, did you say?
I worked there. I worked there in the food industry, but I didn't bartend when I was there. I bartended in Alaska. I bartended in South Dakota, and I bartended in the Caribbean.
All right.
Where in Alaska were you bartending at? Was it
I was
there in Elmendorf? Was it Elmendorf Air Force Base is out there? That's around the Anchorage area, or were you up closer to Juneau?
I was actually in Whittier on a cruise boat.
Oh,
even better.
Ooh. All right. So the cruise line. So was that part of the deal? The Caribbean and Alaska were those cruise lines you were working with?
It was really seasonal jobs, and they were contractual seasonal jobs. So every time the season ended, depending on who you knew and what was going on, you kind of get invited to go somewhere else. So the guy that I was rooming with in South Dakota, we parted ways when I went to Alaska, and then he called me. He was running the Hilton in the Caribbean and said he needed a bar manager. And once I got there, I ended up with a different gig. But you know, just the way it is, you know, when you're traveling around and bartending and industry stuff. So,
all right, take me to Israel.
Your itinerary goes like this.
Yeah.
What's that now?
Your itinerary goes like this when you're traveling around in the business.
Take me to Israel. What did you do in Israel, and how did you get there? Where did you work?
Israel, I went to work on a kibbutz, and I ended up in their kitchen, just you know, doing maintenance, doing serving, you know, just kind of cutting my teeth. It was a long time ago. It was almost 20 years ago.
Okay.
But you know, it really kind of made me fall in love with the industry, with traveling, and you know, just it was really just the start. So a kibbutz was a different lifestyle. It was you know, you weren't paid very much at all. It was just living conditions, but it was the exposure. It was the experience.
Wow. All right. So now you said you offered a gig in with Diageo, but you wanted to stay in Maine, right? So tell me about the girl that made you settle down.
Well, when I was managing a nightclub in St. Thomas, and at that time there was only 2 nightclubs that stayed open until 4 a.m. And we had from 2 o'clock in the morning to 4 a.m. we had all the other industry people, all the other industry bartenders come to our bar, and you know, it picked up from 2 to 4 o'clock. So my wife, who I met there, she was bartending at one of the bars next door, and just you know, just kind of how it happens. And there was a point where I said I was never going to leave. You know, you would catch me dead off that island. And the moment she goes, "So when are we moving?" You know, I was, well, whenever you want to.
Oh, I know.
So, then it became, where are we going? And we went to Colorado for a brief, I think it was 11 months, maybe 13 months. It was like, I like to ski. You want to ski? So we skied, and then we just couldn't get away from the ocean. And I said, you know, I'd rather see the ocean every day than never go in it. Where do you want to go? And she said New England. So as soon as I got an opportunity in New England, we went to and moved here to Maine.
Nice. All right. So
and we had Joe Louis Bourbon. We're very lucky that he did so.
Yeah.
because when we first got going, we knew we needed somebody who could teach us a little bit about bourbon. And we met Michael, and Michael got me involved with Stave and Thief, and he's talking about the lapel, and that's it right there on my jacket. And fantastic class, tremendous opportunity, and I thought it'd be wonderful to bring Michael on the show today and talk about a few of the things and ask some questions of him that maybe some people are, find a little mysterious about bourbon, and maybe he could uncover some of the secrets that are on the label and talk to us about the tasting room.
So yeah, that's where we're headed next, right? Let's dive into Joe Louis. So Peter, when you guys were connecting with the Davis Valley Distillery, and then were you already a bourbon steward at that point when you were trying to pick the formula that became Joe Louis?
I was, Michael. I took Michael's class. Michael runs a company called Man and Oak. He is the man when it comes to the oak in Maine, and people all over Southern Maine attend his various seminars on a regular basis, and he teaches a great class. I encourage anybody who has an opportunity to check out his website, check out what he does, and you'd benefit greatly by learning a little bit about bourbon from Michael. And so I knew that bourbon was something I drank, but it wasn't something I knew a lot about, and I wanted to learn more and grow my appreciation for the spirit and understand more deeply the history and the distilling process and the label. The label, people are fooled by the labels, and I mean a great example I think is age statements. Age statements are tricky things.
Yeah.
And how do you read an age statement? What's the difference between a straight bourbon and bourbon? What are all those secrets? And you pick that up in Michael's class, and so it was a great opportunity, great experience for me, and I'm always happy to say I'm a stave and thief bourbon steward. It makes me happy.
Let's not forget that when we were deciding, we were tasting. Mm-hmm. Michael led the session for us up in Portland, right? So, and I have a question for you, Michael. Since you tasted it before it was in the bottle, does it taste different when it's in the bottle?
Well, there's a satisfaction to knowing, but yeah, it's all about your olfactory and your senses and how your brain associates the taste. So before we were just kind of tasting through a lot of proofs, right? We had the mash bill down, and Peter and JJ knew they were going with the Davidson Valley Distillers, which I think was great, and the mash bill was fantastic. And it was really at that point, what proof do we want to go with? And we were doing a lot of evaluating rather than just sitting back and appreciating. So yeah, it tastes different.
Yeah, tastes better, doesn't it?
It does. It does. When you're not trying to make those decisions, yeah, it tastes better.
Now remember, we were comparing it. I forgot. We compared it to. I forgot what we compared it to. Do you remember?
We had. That's a good question.
It was a long time ago, and we're all getting old.
It was. It really was. We compared it to a New England corn whiskey. Just for giggles, and I can't remember the name of that one. And then we did Clyde Mays, I believe, and we had one more in there. And really just to kind of give us a sense of the different mash bills and where we wanted to be on proof. And I think we had a barrel finished one, if I believe. We had a sample that was barrel proof, but we didn't use that for the tasting. That was just the sample that was set, 120 proof. And we had it proofed down to 85, 90, and 95, and that's what we're deciding.
Mm-hmm. Michael, tell us a little bit about Man and Oak and your business.
So again, when I was a whiskey ambassador, I really wanted that extra, certification, something saying that I knew what I knew, and because once I was Stave and Thief certified, I really wanted to give that experience to other people. And my goal when I opened Man and Oak was to be kind of this unfiltered whiskey, kind of rogue whiskey ambassador. You start talking to whiskey ambassadors and they're very brand oriented, which is great, but they can be biased one way or another, right? They're drinking the Kool-Aid of their own brand. I've been asked to do a lot of tastings for bachelor parties, for weddings, for companies, and I wanted to do it in an unbiased way. I wanted to give them the best bourbons or whiskeys to taste, and I didn't want to do it, because the company wanted me to do it. I just wanted to choose from everything and talk about it openly, and that's what Man and Oak is. We do seminars, we do whiskey blending workshops, we do bourbon certification courses. I've brought in people under my label to do tastings as well. For Noah was Robert Robinson. He's well known through the Scotch industry. But really, it's just an unfiltered whiskey bourbon education program, and I'm happy to have created it. It's gone really well.
So, Michael, if you could walk me through when you're doing a tasting. What are some of the skills that you utilize with a group of people there? Are you clapping hands and rubbing them together? Tell me a little bit about that.
It depends on who I'm doing it for. If it's a really advanced group and we're tasting through, let's say they want to taste through a single brand but different barrels, we're going to do all the advanced things like clapping our hands together, rubbing it, getting the aroma of the grain. Most of the time, it's for a novice group that really just wants to pair bourbon with food and have a good time.
Sure.
So, the things that I'm thinking about are, keeping it, what are they going to remember, right? I don't want to dig too deep down into the minutia of every little detail.
Right.
I'm also not, I've always despised the wine experts that would come into a room and they go, they'd smell their glass and go, oh yeah, I get stewed apples and Grey Poupon, and, they just shake their head and they look at you, you look at them, and because you're shaking your head, they start shaking their head like, oh yeah, stewed apples, I get that too. And it was really the power of suggestion that I didn't like that brand ambassadors and whiskey people do that. So I really try to just break it down to what is a whiskey, why does it taste the way it does, right? Why do you get caramel with bourbon? Why do you get vanilla with bourbon? And the degree to which you taste that at a tasting is really to your olfactory and your senses. But I want people to understand why those things are there and not just regurgitate a tasting note. Yeah.
No, we've said it plenty of times. Everybody's got their own palate. You're going to taste something completely different from what Jamie would get, or from what Michael would get, or from what Peter would get. We all have that different, but we all end up tasting a really good bourbon at the end of the day, right?
Correct. And one of the things that I like telling people, it's not that we're all tasting, so much of a different thing, but it's how we digest it, right? When I get caramel, my olfactory, and your olfactory is what ties a sense to a memory, right? So my olfactory, if I get caramel, may take me back to my grandma's house where she had those caramel candy chews. And maybe my grandma was a really, really great person. So anytime I smell, caramel in anything, that's what triggers those memories, and that's what triggers my senses to appreciate it. Other people may smell caramel and may take them to their aunt's house that had a vicious dog, and they couldn't stand the smell of the place, and they're like, yeah, caramel just doesn't do it for me. And they just don't, they can't articulate why, but it's up here and how you perceive it. And we perceive the same thing in different ways.
Perfect. So can I ask a question? Does that mean that your grandma's the reason why you like bourbon?
No. Definitely not. But it's the best example I could give for something we all kind of smell within bourbon, and a good grandma-esque analogy.
That depends.
I think that's so true though with bourbon. I notice since I've really made a study of my pastime and a business of my pastime, I've got maybe 15 different bottles open, and all sorts of mash bills, all sorts of age statements, all sorts of localities and water. And you know what? They're all a bit different. And sometimes there's one I really like a lot on a given night. And another night I hit it. It's maybe not, maybe it doesn't come across the same way to me. But I think it's one of the beautiful things about bourbon is that the drink itself brings up a lot of uniqueness every time you have it. It's not like drinking Coca-Cola. Every time you drink a Coca-Cola, it's the same old thing. Bourbon has that mix. It mixes up on your palate.
So, Michael, with Man and Oak,
depending on what you had to eat earlier that day, yeah.
Yeah. So, Michael, with
Jamie?
Man and Oak, Michael, going through can you become a Stave and Thief bourbon steward through Man and Oak, or is that a separate thing?
No. After I took the class at Stave and Thief, I wanted to recreate that class here in Maine. I saw that they were doing courses outside of Kentucky. So really, in 2014, the only way to do this was to fly down to Kentucky They take the class at Moonshine University. A really cool name, but it's a really cool place. And they do distillers courses. They do bourbon certification courses. They do rum distilling courses. And I saw that they were doing these courses in St. Louis as far as the certified bourbon steward, and I think Chicago, a lot of the bigger markets. And I called and I asked, I said, hey, are you guys coming to Maine? And you get the answer, not in a mean way, but, that you would expect to get. If you're like, hey, are you guys coming to Maine? They're a small company. They're like, no. And and I was like, what do you guys care if I, take this on? And they're like, yeah, have at it. And I don't think they realized what I was going to do, which was pretty much recreate the class. And it stirred up so much energy within the Portland bartending community. We had a sold out event. It was 40 plus people. Everybody, every brand was there being represented. Every Maine distiller I invited there to represent their brands, because Stave and Thief is really an extension of the Kentucky Distillers Association and the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. But with it, and being that I was teaching the class, I wanted to include Maine distillers in this course as well. And Stave and Thief was great. They gave me full blessing to do whatever I wanted to do, as long as I was sticking true to the course. It's an online course, so I teach the class. It's an 8-hour class. We go over everything from the history of bourbon to the labels to distilling science to types of bourbon. And it's a very hands-on class. We do a sensory analysis. And at the end, you take the course online, and it takes about a day or two for them to grade it. It's not something that I'm sitting there marking down if they get right or wrong. It actually goes to Stave and Thief Society. They grade it. They grade your essay. They send you the certification. And if you go to Kentucky, there are a lot of bars that if you're wearing your lapel, they'll actually give you 10% off either the entire bill or 10% off the bourbon. There are a lot of distilleries that give you breaks on the tours if you have a Stave and Thief Society pin. So it's picking up. It's really cool. It's through me, I do them every once in a while, maybe at least once a year. I don't want to flood the market in Maine and have everyone walking around with a pin, but I was going to do another one right before this all set us home. But as soon as we pick up, we'll do another one here.
Well,
one of the things I learned in the class that I think is really valuable is putting together flights. And when I'm online and I'm reading in all the groups, and I see people making comparisons of bourbons. One of the things I see a lot, and a real common and easy way to understand, I often see people comparing a wheat forward bourbon to a rye forward bourbon, and I ask myself, why would you bother? It's the two flavors are so far apart, and the two bourbons are so uniquely different. What possibly can be gained by matching them up against it? And so a lot of times I'll chime in when somebody's comparing bourbons and the mash bills are so far apart that is, it's meaningless, I think, to compare the two of them. It's a contrast for sure. And I got that's something I really picked up in the class. And the other thing I really liked about the class was learning how to use this thing. And I thought you'd talk a little bit about the tasting wheel, Michael.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the dreaded tasting wheel. It's the
dreaded tasting wheel.
So you see those all the time. You see them with wine. You see them in any spirit category. You see them with gin and tequila and rum. But really, that sheet, if you can hold that up, Peter, it really helps you drill down a tasting note. So what you really do with those is you start from the inside. And if you're given a few, broad categories when you're tasting something, hey, does it smell like wood, or does it smell like spice, or does it smell like sweet? Then you could be like, oh yeah, maybe I get all those things, but maybe it's really sweet. So then you go to the next category down, and you're like, well, what kind of sweet? Is it fruit bread? Is it candy? And then you're like, oh, it's fruit bread. And then you go another, and you can just keep refining how you get down there. So when you're seeing and you're reading whiskey magazines like Whiskey Advocate or Bourbon Enthusiast, and you see these guys and they're putting down these tasting notes, and you're like, how did they get there? They're really using these tasting wheels, and they kind of drill down and drill down and drill down and drill down and get more precise on what they're tasting, what they're experiencing with the flavor wheel.
So looking at the bottle, right? You said there's a lot of things that a bottle and a label are gonna tell you. So what can a label tell somebody, and what is Joe Lewis's label telling us?
Labels are everything. I mean, they're really the key to, especially if you're a bourbon nerd and you kind of hunt through stores, you're looking for something you never had before. Labels are going to tell you the age. Labels are going to tell you, where it's coming from. Labels are going to tell you who the distiller is. Labels are going to tell you the mash bill. They're going to tell you the backstory. And one of the things that's great about the Joe Louis bourbon, and that I was really happy that Peter kind of took to heart, is he tells the backstory about Davidson Valley Distillers, and I was really happy that he decided to do that. Some brands aren't able to. They sign non-disclosures, and that's sometimes sad. They do for protection, but as a bourbon fan, I want to know where the bourbon's coming from, and I want to know that person creating the bourbon, that person supplying the bourbon, are both equally proud of each other. And when you see that, I mean, you can just start diving right into it because you know about it. And that's the fun part about bourbon. So one of the things that Joe Louis is telling us is that's a straight bourbon. So we know this is 2 years old or more, right? It can be, no matter what, it's 2 years old or older with straight bourbons. And that's really great because a lot of these craft bourbons, they're spending 6 months in the barrel and that's it. And, they'll put it in small writing somewhere on the back, aged for 6 months. With a $60, $70 price tag. So straight bourbon is always something you're looking for because it's been aged accordingly and properly, which is great to see.
Michael, can I add something to that age statement? What people should be looking for, there's a whole growing category of whiskeys and bourbons that are not aged in barrels like they used to be, or they're supposed to be. They still qualify as a bourbon mash bill, but not a true bourbon. And if you look at, there's a number of them, and I have some over here, but I don't want to call anybody out, that it says aged at least 1 day because because it's been in contact with oak, usually in an expedited way, either in a tank with oak or in a machine. I call it like a dialysis machine where it pumps it over the wood for 18 hours and it gets the equivalent of 2 years of aging. But people should look at that because you'll see a lot of popular brands are kind of going that route.
There's no way to there's no way to fake having a straight bourbon on your label. You can't. It's impossible. TTP laws won't allow it. So it's one of those things. What you're getting is authentic. What you're getting took the time to actually become a bourbon. It's not a Frankenstein bourbon. I know several of the ones you're talking about, but it's a good sign, and you want to see that when you're looking for a bourbon.
All right, so bourbon. This is we're at 90 proof, right? 45% alcohol. Is that the minimum to be able to be called bourbon, or is it 80? Is it 80?
It's 80.
Okay,
it's 80.
Right. So we're a little hotter than the bare minimum, right?
Yep.
Which is nice, brings it up a little bit. That's the thing about a lot of people who start drinking a lot of bourbon. The more they drink, the hotter they want it. Is what I find from people that are really into it, and they just want it to just blast their heads off. And I enjoy that once in a while, but generally speaking, I don't like to blow my head off with my bourbon.
That's not going to be a daily drinker if you're blowing your head off.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I think a lot of the people that know their bourbon well and they really get into it, you're getting a bourbon, let's say like a Booker's, and it's 132.5%. If you actually know the equations and know how to downproof accordingly, and what your preferred proof is, like if I know if I want a bourbon, that bourbon is always at 90 proof, and that's where I enjoy it. That's my sweet spot, and I can get a bourbon that's usually at 132 point something, but if I know how to get it down to my preferred proof, it's awesome, right? So it's really about how does it taste out of the cask? You get to experience that, and then you get to downproof it yourself precisely to where you want it. What's nice about 90 proof is that you can add a little bit of water, you can add an ice cube, and you're not diluting it to the point where it's not bourbon anymore. But it's not so hot like you say it's going to blow your head off, which I never enjoyed either. I never understood why people, try to challenge themselves into this, this contest of what you can take as far as the proof goes. But
What do you think of this? It's empty, but
Well, we know what you thought of it.
yeah, it's good. No, so this is, I'm not usually a fan of anything that's over 100 proof, but the Weller Antique 107. Of course, it's a weeded bourbon.
For me personally, I love trying all sorts of spirits, and
Sure.
I think the more you've tasted, you can find the positive, even maybe in a spirit that you wouldn't drink on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, what we wanted to do with Joe Louis Bourbon is we wanted to make certain that it was easily approachable. We wanted to be sure that it could be a daily drink or somebody crack open, at 8 o'clock at night and have a drink before they crash out a little bit later. And that isn't, to me, that needs to be a bourbon that's easily approachable, not too awfully hot, and not way out on the various palates that some bourbons or some other spirits bring to you. Not that those other, more, maybe exotic type spirits are bad, but they're definitely not going to be something to drink every day.
All right, before we get into the bottle itself and start tasting it and talking about the aromas and
We're waiting to taste it? Oh.
Yeah. Well, no, talking about tasting it because I've been tasting it too. Matt and I, we did a little promo for the show yesterday and we talked about it. And I mentioned to Matt, and I don't know if you guys have seen it, but they did an appraisal on the Antique Roadshow of a vintage bottle of Joe Louis Bourbon. Have you guys seen that?
I have not.
Okay, it's kind of neat.
I have seen it. I have seen it.
So Antique Roadshow, and it's an empty bottle, sadly enough, but it's actually autographed by Joe Louis. It's autographed in pencil, and so the woman had it in her family. Her dad was a big boxing fan, and he met Joe Louis in his travels, and Joe autographed the bottle. And so they appraised it. It was missing the original bottles came with a pair of like little boxing gloves, little red plastic boxing gloves, and they said that really doesn't make that big of a difference. That could add like $50 to $100 to the value if they had the boxing gloves. But the autographed bottle, you guys, Michael, because you saw it. Matt alluded to it yesterday. So Peter, Michael, what do you think a vintage Joe Louis autographed by Joe would go for?
I don't know, but I'd pay a lot more for one that still had the juice in it.
There you go. It was appraised with the autograph between $1,200 and $1,500.
Unbelievable.
So that's that was Matt's call yesterday.
Score.
$1,200 and $1,500. Yeah. And then so it was the pint though. It was a pint bottle that he had. That looks like the picture there.
Yeah.
But
that's the fifth.
So, and he said, but a Joe Louis bottle without the signature it would still be $500 to $600. So, yeah. So I was pretty amazed.
You mentioned the gloves, and I just want you all to know that eventually there will be a Joe Louis edition that comes out that does, in fact, have the boxing gloves hanging around the neck. And
throwback. All right.
Well, I can tell you what. Someday when you've got about 8 hours, I'll tell you the story of the boxing.
8. I can think of how many weeks of conversation went.
Oh my God! I must have gone through 300 cycles on that.
Wow.
The boxing gloves almost derailed the whole thing.
It did.
So I thought that was extraordinarily interesting that the bottles. Now there's my question. Actually, all my question was: have you seen a bottle, a Joe Louis, the original one? Have you tasted the original? No. Okay. No.
To the best of my knowledge, none exists.
Okay.
And I have certainly, maybe and candidly, maybe through the Man Cave Happy Hour, an appeal to anybody. If you can find a bottle of Joe Louis Bourbon anywhere, please give us a shout out. We have no intention of opening it. It's a historical artifact at this point, and for us, the Joe Louis Bourbon mission is about more than the bourbon. And certainly having that actual bottle with the gloves around it as a testament to the authenticity of the brand and a reminder of where this all started would be a tremendous thing for the company. We'd love to see it. We'd love to have it. And so I, an appeal to anybody who knows anything about that particular bottle. If it's out there, please call us.
Yeah.
There's got to be.
That'd be something to, hey, Peter, that'd be something to go after Justin's House of Bourbon in Louisville. They're the world's leader in antique bottles of bourbon, and see if they have one. Yeah, I mean,
It's on my calendar for tomorrow.
Justin's House of Bourbon. They got some pretty rare ones for sure.
You know, we
As
do know the lineage, though. The lineage is that the bourbon was brewed at the Old Joe Distillery, that's now part of the Two Roses family. And
Four Roses, yep.
so we do a Four Roses family. So we do understand the lineage, and there is a lot of tales of Joe's experiences down there. I think we talked about that maybe in another show. Michael, you know what I wanted to ask you? We touched a little bit about on aging and the labels on aging, and I think that's really key. But lately I've been reading about yeast in the role that yeast actually plays in the distilling, and to me that kind of reminds me of the role that the char plays in the bourbon aging. Could you talk a little bit about yeast and why that's important, and how some of the legacy yeasts that are coming out might be important to get more involved with?
Yeah, it's important. It's important. Every distiller has a proprietary strand of yeast. That Maker's Mark will go so far to ensure that they keep it at 4 separate locations in 4 separate countries in case there's a fire at their major distillery. They still have the original strain of yeast to keep recreating that yeast, because yeast is what kind of sets the whole mash in motion. So without your yeast and without your proprietary strains of yeast, your bourbon is different. Your bourbon is changed. So they go through great pains to create a yeast that they want and that they want to work with. Back in the old days, they would use wild yeast, just have those out there, the open fermenters, and let it kind of do its natural thing. But unless you recapture and do the sour mash and make sure that process is using the same yeast, your whiskey is different. And the name of the game today is being consistent. And without your strain of yeast and it being proprietary towards your bourbon or your whiskey, you lose that consistency. So that's why it's really important from one distillery to another.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so given Joe Louis a tilt out of the bottle here and into the glass, it's very, to me, because again, the mash bill, right, 66% corn. Michael, what's the rest of the rundown there?
14% rye and 20% barley.
All right, so
And the barley is something that's could be considered a high barley. It's a little bit unique, but it works.
So for me, on the nose, it's very, very corn forward. It's very corn smell, and I like it. I like the corn. It's a different, different from other bourbons. You smell. I get less of the caramel and a whole lot of the corn, but then the flavor. So Michael, when I'm tasting it, what should I be looking for in tasting, and how should I taste a bourbon?
As far as how you taste a bourbon, my suggestion to everybody is always, try it neat first, and then add some water. And when you add water, just be consistent about how much you're adding. If you're just kind of throwing a splash here, and the next time you throw a couple splashes, then again, you're changing it every time, and you're changing the bar that you're measuring from every time. So be consistent, whether that's a spoon, a teaspoon, or a water dropper. Be consistent in how you're adding your water into your whiskey. If you're evaluating whiskey, don't use ice. Ice, while it's pleasant, it kind of takes everything and it makes the whiskey catatonic, right? It pulls all the flavors real tight. And that's why you can drink it real quick when it's cold on ice, because you don't taste anything. It numbs everything down. So that's how you taste whiskey, or my suggestion for how you taste whiskey. With this particular one, as Michael pointed out, the barley's significantly higher than you're going to see in a lot of bourbons, which is fantastic actually, because a lot of them will use the barley part of the mash bill just to create to get the enzymes a kick in the butt, and they don't really use it for the taste. When what you get out of barley is a really soft touch, and it accentuates the sweetness. So this is an incredibly soft bourbon. Almost drinks like a wheater, even though it's not, because you got the high corn. The high corn, it's got to have it to be a bourbon, and you got the high malted barley, so you don't have that flavor grain, dominating the bourbon, which is the rye. So you get a really nice, soft, sweet bourbon. And that's what I would look for in this one. It's very, very approachable and sweet and soft.
I mentioned that this got last week. The American Distilling Institute was supposed to have their annual conference, and they always have spirit. They have major judging, and we submitted this, but it was before the Joe Louis label was approved. So we submitted it under the same bourbon in a different label, and it won silver. It won a silver
Nice.
in the genuine craft spirits category bourbon. So judged blindly, I guess you could call it, because no one even knew what brand it really was.
Yeah, the mash bill is really so unique on this one. And when you guys were coming up with it and lit it out there that it was the mash bill that it was, I did some research and I was looking around. There's nothing similar. And to a bourbon enthusiast, that's music to my ears. A lot of people, when they create a bourbon, they say, "Oh, I want it to taste like X," and they just go 1 or 2% off the rye count on another one, and it just becomes all too, the waters become muddy. And it's a very, very unique mash bill. I think that speaks volumes to its how authentic it is.
Well, Jeff has joined us. Hey, Jeff.
Oh, hello.
Well, hey, Jeff.
Are you there, Jeff?
He's connecting.
He's connecting. Yeah.
Yep, there he
He
is.
is connecting.
Right on.
We've got him muted.
So, Michael, I'm
unmuting him.
when I'm tasting this, Michael, I get like a lot of pepper afterwards at the end. Where's that pepper or that spicy pepper flavor come from?
It all comes from the rye. The rye is your spicy grain. You're always going to get it exactly where you're getting it. You're going to get it, in the end. And
That's what
it's what gives bourbon, a nice balance.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, I was
Now I know why he's muting himself.
I was being 12 there for a second. Yeah.
So we should tell everyone who Jeff is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey guys, sorry about that.
Yeah.
All right.
So thanks for joining us, Jeff. Jeff is our brand manager with Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits in Michigan.
Welcome.
And he is the guy who is responsible and leading the sales effort for us in Michigan. And we couldn't be any more proud to have him on board. And Jeff, you missed a little bit of the show earlier today. Michael Meir, he's a Detroit native living in Portland, Maine, and he heads up a company called Man and Oak, which does a whole lot of different things, including the Stave and Thief Bourbon Stewardship, of which I met Michael through when I got mine. And so we've been talking about bourbon, and it's suddenly occurring to me that I was supposed to send you a bottle of bourbon. I have not done that. I apologize.
That is okay.
Jeff, welcome to the Man Cave Happy Hour. Really appreciate you popping in and joining us as we do this in this new world, learning about bourbon, helping the Joe Louis Bourbon company, helping them to launch in Detroit, and all the work that you're doing here. We need to meet face to face, which was going to happen in about 12 minutes from now when we're going to be here all together. But it is what it is. But, share with us a little bit about your endeavors here in the Detroit market with Joe Louis Bourbon.
So to say the least, it's been interesting because we launched the brand. Hang on one second, my light is terrible. Sorry about that, guys. So
turn it off. No, I'm just kidding.
We launched the brand. I think we launched the brand the first week of the lockdown. Let's call it the quarantine in Michigan. Yeah. So it's been interesting to say the least. So in the first couple weeks, we've gotten, I think on Saturday, I think we had 126 new distributions, new accounts sold in the off premise, which is good, which is really, really good for the situation that we're in right now. So I can't be happier with how it's looking right now. If I look at it today, I'd guess that we're probably close to 200 new accounts sold, which is a really good start considering all the things that we have going on right now. Right. I think that we have the ability to grow exponentially, and I think that the opportunities are there with all the activation that Joe Louis Bourbon has going on with Golden Gloves and things like that. In Michigan, we had a couple events coming up. I think they would have probably happened this week, if I'm not mistaken.
This weekend.
So we had a couple events coming up that would have really, really put Joe Louis Bourbon on the map in Michigan. And, I still think it's going to happen. I just think it's going to take a little longer, unfortunately. But
what a gut punch, right?
Yeah, I'm very confident and I'm very happy with how we've done. Our sales team has done, basically calling accounts on their phones. But our sales reps have great relationships in Michigan, and they reach out to their accounts. And it looks like, Peter, you had a really good call today with Woods Fine Wine.
I did.
And that's going to be really big moving forward. And then, obviously the online atmosphere in Michigan is probably going to change because of this. With the ability to order in Michigan, I would guess that there's going to be a change in the direction there, with the ability to order online coming probably within the next 6 months to a year.
Jeff, let's hit that a little bit more. What else is going to change? When are we, are we ever really going back to the bar? Are we ever going to find ourselves, bumping shoulders in a concert? How long is it going to take for business to return to normal?
That's a great question. So in Michigan, our Governor Whitmer, extended the restaurant closure. It's not really a closure, but in a sense, it really is. The restrictions on restaurants to April 30th. I think that we're probably looking at midsummer, maybe end of summer, before we see any sense of normalcy. And even then, I think you might see a 75% capacity on, what you and I are willing to go out and do, what you're going to see in restaurants, what you're going to see in the on-premise in general. That's really, really tough to see. And I feel really, really bad for the on-premise accounts, because a lot of these people are small businesses and they're doing the best that they can. And this is completely out of their control. That being said, I do think you'll see it come back to normal to an extent. I just think it's going to take a long time, because there is going to be, to some sense, a new normal. But, one of the things that you see in Michigan, and I think you've probably seen it across the United States, is a couple of things. One, with the on-premise closing, the off-premise had skyrocketed at the end of March. So we saw an off-premise boost across most brands, 20 to 30% outside of what we would normally see because of the off-premise, or because of the on-premise closing down, or, limiting what they can do.
Right.
You saw the first week of April, you saw a little bit of that still coming into play. This week, it's dropped like a rock, and the off-premise has dropped exponentially. I would say probably tomorrow, and closing out the week, you're probably going to see a big boost in the off-premise again, because everybody's going to get their stimulus checks tomorrow. So I think you're going to see some change, but overall, from the perspective of on-premise, you might see a new normal. And I think another new normal in the state of Michigan that you might see is Michigan from a government standpoint is going to have to change, and they're going to have to become more efficient in the way they go to business. We'll put it that way. And Southern, as a company, is right there ready to do it when Michigan's ready to take that on.
Wow, it's it's really something to think about, all the significant changes that we're gonna be going through, and it's really hard to know where it all leads.
When launching a brand or a company in this type of environment, it speaks volumes that Joe Louis Bourbon has been able to continue your plan, your business plans when starting a business has to be so spot on. It has to be able to live and breathe and change so drastically that it can maintain. So that's one of the great things that I really enjoy about Joe Louis Bourbon, that you guys are really staying to that business plan as close as possible.
We always said that this brand was more than the bourbon, was more than the product, that it was, that we had accepted a certain responsibility, and through accepting that certain responsibility created, a set of requirements on us. And we've been fortunate to meet really great people like the Man Cave Happy Hour, like Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits, like Michael at Man and Oak, and Michael Short, Victory Spirits, and without the flexibility, without the commitment and the energy that all the people who've seen this mission, that bought into it, have been willing to put out. I don't know where we find the energy, really. It's frightening, but what we're doing is, we've said, if you've got to go at it in this environment and get into the ring right now, who better to get into the ring with than Joe Louis? And
yeah, look, you guys. I think that for me, for you, Peter, I think that our communication across the board for us has been really, really good, and I think that shows to the sales team. And I think it's going to continue to show with our activation when we can activate. I think you're going to see what we can do, and I think your consumer is going to see that as well with the execution that our team does. It's going to be everywhere. You're going to see posters and things everywhere because we can. But man, it's been a tough go.
Well, we definitely want to let you all know that that JJ and I, JJ McCarzo is my partner in this, and we just are we're really grateful, and we're really grateful to have such a group of people around us, and we're thankful that this is all going in this direction right now. But this show was not to. We're in here to, commiserate about COVID-19 and everything it's done to our lives. I think, excuse me, that having Michael Meir with us today and talking about bourbon in general is really a lot more exciting.
Yes. So, Michael, I'm actually going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say, Professor Michael, I think you got 2 new students. I think Matthew and I are going to be signing up.
Hey, listen, I plan to come out. I mean, I've always wanted to come, home to Detroit and do one of these bourbon certification courses. So, once the madness is died down a bit, I think we'll definitely make that plan to go out there and make this happen somewhere around Detroit. So, Jeff, I'll be reaching out to you. Seeing what brands we can get involved. I've done this in Maine. I think you jumped in a little late, but. Basically, I took the Stave and Thief bourbon certification course, and with their blessing, I brought it to Maine, and it's been a really good success. They've been focused kind of in the Kentucky market doing it, and being that I was born and raised in Southfield, I would love to come home and do one of these courses.
So,
Mike, that would be fantastic.
Do you do them online? Do you do them online though?
You can do it 2 ways. You can do this online. You can go to staveandthief.com and you can take the course. It's $60. You can download the material. You can spend a while reading it. I think what makes what I do and what they do when you get it in person and when you're seeing it, when you're getting a distiller actually talking about distilling, when you're talking to a bartender about the rules of bourbon, when you're having that hands-on, especially if you're really into bourbon, you really want to digest this stuff. There's nothing better than hearing it, one-on-one and seeing it and actually, doing a nosing assessment and seeing how well you could decipher corn, or malt or rye, from each other when they're separated. So, having that hands-on aspect is great. So yes, you could do it online, but I suggest the in-person version is much better. I've been able to, be fortunate to do a lot of private trainings with bars where I go and just spend, kind of the condensed version where I spend 4 hours training the entire staff on bourbon. it looks good for them to be, say, hey, our entire staff is, is a bourbon certified. Right. So yes, you can, but not suggested.
So how do people find Man and Oak?
You go to manandoak.com and just check out the things that are coming up. Of course, everything is on hold right now because I usually use the on-premise for a lot of, my events. But, once we find our way out of this thing, we're going to kick off. And I think to what, something exciting for Joe Louis and all of us within this industry is that everyone who's into whiskey has been kind of so bottled up and is just kind of jonesing to get out there. When this all ends, we're going to be excited about new brands to try. We're going to be excited about the brands that have messages. We're going to be excited about new restaurants. We're going to be excited just to get out there and just to try a lot of things. And the things that are going to have good messages and resonate are going to be really, really, really powerful. And it's going to be cool to see. So, it's going to be exciting. Yeah.
Michael, thank you for hanging out in the man cave. We appreciate it. I think we learned a bit today, Matthew.
I more than I thought I would, and I cannot thank you enough.
Thanks guys for having me on.
Right on. mancavehappyhour.com. It's manandoak.com. JoeLouisBourbon.com. And
yes.
You got the store locator on there, right? Where's Joe? You can find out where it is. Numbers on that are growing daily. Thank you to Jeff and his team. So
yes.
JoeLouisBourbon.com. Find out where is Joe. And Peter and Michael, thanks for bringing us on. Matthew and I are enjoying every moment of our Tuesdays with you guys.
Thanks for starting my week out. Yeah.
All right, here we are, gentlemen. Cheers.
Cheers, fellas.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Cheers.